Hi there, welcome to Hey Sound Guy, the podcast where I'll be peeking behind the curtains of the wonderful world of music. Now, I will be interviewing musicians, music industry professionals, and engineers as I go along with this podcast. During this whole time, we've all had to resort to other strengths and passions to get us through, and one such individual is my friend with whom I'm speaking with. He has become a life coach. He started a podcast, very inspirational. I like to chat with people to see their resilience, their resolve to get through whatever life throws at us. And he was a great engineer, still is. Has done many international tours. I know him from working with at Boysdale. And it's my great pleasure to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, Pete Middleton.
Nice.
Good start there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tians.
Thanks. Thanks for doing this. Like I said when we spoke, I found what you've been doing in the past sort of year very interesting, and I want to applaud you for that. First of all, before we get started, before we dive really deep into it, can you introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, by the way. That was a very nice compliment. And so just for some history, I know you, Tians, through the live sound engineering that I used to do. So I was a live sound engineer for 10 years in the music industry. Did a lot of venue work and touring as well. But now I transitioned into life coaching, and I work in creativity and also transformational space. So it's anything. People come to me basically when they have been struggling with an area of their life that they're stuck in, and they want to kind of transcend that and find a new path.
That's fantastic. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always good to have a fresh, objective set of eyes on a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of key. That's kind of key to the fulfillment of anyone's life, I think, to when someone's stuck, and to find another perspective, either through finding a mentor or an elder, or like a family member even, or a friend, or just being able to hold that space for yourself, just finding a new perspective on things. And then inevitably we all find like the next step that we feel comfortable to take forward comes from that expanding of awareness and perspective.
But then also I suppose taking that next step, sometimes you gotta take a risk. You gotta sometimes put yourself maybe in an uncomfortable position, to not just to kind of see who you are, but also if you want to grow. There's always growth pains in everything, really. And I mean, I think something that you did where you transcended from the live sound aspect to what you're doing now, I'm sure that wasn't probably not the easiest decision, and I'm sure there was a lot of sort of fear and doubt that sort of evolved around that. But if we don't take chances, then we're never gonna get better. I always say that I even told spoke to my daughter the other day, because she's very competitive, and we went to her swimming lesson the other day, and she swims really well. She's very good and very capable of doing what she's doing, but then her competitive streak, I see her when she's swimming with another kid in the class, that she'll sort of look up and see that maybe this person's ahead of her or next to her, and then she'll start losing her concentration a little bit. And I said to her that the only person that when it's a competition, then it's a competition. Okay, that's a different thing. You go there to compete. but in your everyday life, when you're learning, when you're progressing in whatever discipline it is that you're undertaking, that the only person that you have to be in competition with is the you of yesterday. If you can be a better you today than you were yesterday, then you're winning at life. You're progressing, and you're moving forward. So in order to kind of drive yourself, but also not to maybe be too harsh on yourself, because it doesn't matter what it is, there might be somebody out there that's better than you at something. But as long as you find the enjoyment and the fulfillment in the process, then you're winning. So I think that's an important lesson that we gotta all remember.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful and really central to fulfillment and enjoyment. Like you said, it's being having your eye and being aware on your own timing and how you're evolving and how you're emerging in your life and what it is. We can talk more about how you get there, but essentially, like you said, the risk and the growing pains is very much present because we all exist within social systems that, if we're going to turn up in a changed state, then that system's going to seem unsteady to the people within it, that are used to it being a certain way. So it's not simple. It's like we're like navigating all of these things all of the time. But yeah, I think what you're saying about just really deepening our understanding of ourselves and where it is that we want to be in our life. And like healthy competition with others is good. Like you mentioned, when it's a competition, Yes. We can strive for excellence in that zone and really appreciate others for pushing us into that area. But if it becomes like an identification of worth and approval, then it becomes something that we're never satisfied with. We're always striving to be someone else's approval in a way.
This is what's that saying? Comparison is the killer of joy. Is it? Comparison is the killer. I think, and I mean, as I always, like you said, the thing about the when you identify as like yourself for 10 years. You were a live sound engineer. You were in the music industry. This was what you did, but it was also who you are in a sense. And for you then to step out of that and to change direction, that can be a scary thing because even not just with all the other implications like the external factors, rent, bills, these sorts of things, but more in terms of am I who I thought I was? Is this still a part of me? How and then to find yourself on that journey is sometimes it's a scary thing. I completely understand and empathize with that. As during this whole time, we've all had to try and figure out a new way for ourselves, especially people in our industry. Myself, I've been very fortunate that I grew up making things and getting hands on with things. So for me, it was a good transition into becoming a backyard carpenter. It was a bit more easy because I had the passion for that, and I already it was a skill that I just needed to develop a little bit more. But if you not to be mean or anything, but if you're like a one-trick pony, if you're like this is all you do, and now that gets taken away, then what do you do? And I've seen that countless times, unfortunately, with people in our industry. And the frustration and the anger that builds, you know, and it comes out in communication, where you know, people they're angry, maybe they're jealous in some sort of way. I mean, as we all kind of feel like, you know, we've been screwed, but it's they don't even have like a particular someone to blame. You know, it's not there wasn't a, you know, I got fired from the band, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, like you know, or the venue just decides to you know, change the whole staff or something like that, you know. It's a thing that's, you know, completely out of our control. And
it's interesting.
People who have excelled at this one thing, and now they're not able to do that. And I think for them, it's a very frustrating situation to be in. And like I said, you know, you can see that in the communication that they, you know, when you talk to people, there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of, you know, resentment even, you know, at no one in particular. So this anger just boils out onto everyone. So I think, you know, in that we can start touching on the coaching thing, because but then also the thing with that is us men, you know, it's a pride thing, isn't it? There's a massive sort of stigma around sharing your feelings, you know.
There is. It's an active condition of UK, at least Western or UK society, it's an active condition for boys to be shamed out of their feelings, and to be made to feel that feelings are kind of wrong or weak or feminine, and all of those things are shamed as well. So to be any of those things as a man, it's almost like it's almost not intellectual, in the sense of like, I know these things. It's like it's a somatic level, it's a subconscious level, like it's like a constriction, like, oh, I can't be any of those things. So and anger is like the one feeling and emotion that we're kind of allowed to be. We're expected to be angry about things, and so for sure it is as men, as well as. And I can touch on what you mentioned in the music industry. It's interesting to notice the patterns of behavior as well. Like these things kind of happen in the music industry. Like people change their crews every 2 years, and there's kind of resentment and anger and blame, and kind of those wounded spaces within us is probably a big part of our industry, actually. Like that is a common thing to go through and to listen to in friends, and to go through yourself. And it's interesting that, you know, the live music industry kind of disappeared overnight, and in that it's very difficult to blame someone, you know, and also if you blame the virus, like we have viruses within us, like we have multiple, you know, so if you're blaming a virus, then you're kind of blaming part of yourself as well. I know this is a deadly virus, but, you know, that very aspect of blame is kind of problematic, because it kind of drives a self-hatred as well. Just to be able to respond to that, I'd say that the way to kind of find meaning and find a positive light on all of those things is that these people, and myself included and yourself included, like, we're great sound engineers for a reason. You know, it's part of our values. For me, it was part of facilitating creativity, facilitating connection between musicians and crowds, and facilitating connection, but actually within a musician, like in the way that I do with coaching now, is like
making them free and able to do their job to the best of their abilities.
Yes, that's the thing. And so everyone who's working in the music industry or has done in the past, when we're sitting in vans or we're sitting in venues, like after a gig, we have these moments with each other, like we're putting the world to rights somehow, but we're also talking about these ways that inspire and light us up about concerts, and I just started to dive into that area and be like, why is it that I love live music? And it's the inspiration, it's the excitement, it's the crowd, it's the visceral nature, the energy of the
energy,
moment. It's all of those things. And so, yes, the industry disappearing was a terrible thing, and it's a shock, and it's okay to be angry and frustrated about that. And also, like, there are moments of gratitude and joy in there, because I get to like explore why it was that I loved that thing so much that disappeared. And I get to translate that in my knowledge of myself and like who I am as a person, what my purpose is for this life that I'm living, which is to connect people to their hearts and souls, and like you said so beautifully, like allow them to be fully able to express themselves.
Yeah, I mean, when when people don't know that we're there, that means we've done our job right.
That was like the number one thing for crew, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. And so that's kind of an aspect of crewing that is like a, how do I put this? It's, it's okay. It's great to want to be behind the scenes and to build something and not take the limelight. That's an amazing thing. There's also, some people in the industry that maybe come to that in a wounded space, like I was never able to perform myself, so I just want to be close to the performance.
Yeah, I find that those ones are usually the most bitter ones, unfortunately. Yes. And they walk around with a crutch of it's almost, I mean, they're almost blaming everyone else. And unfortunately, we've seen that countless times, where, especially if you go to a venue and there's a house tech there and he's been there a while and he's just bitter, and you know exactly why it is. You start chatting with the guy and he's like, oh, I play the guitar as well, and my band's playing at the pub, and these sorts of things. And it's like, I understand because I've always, since I started playing guitar, really, the idea was, to form a rock band and to go out there and play. And I always had in the back of my mind that even if that doesn't work out for me, I still wanted to be part of the music industry. Nice. But fortunately for me, I came to the realization pretty quickly that the amount of time that I would have had to spend practicing my guitar was more than I was realistically able to give. And me being the kind of person that, I always refer to myself as a Swiss Army knife, right? Because I'm not a hunting knife. I'm not like the best blade in the world, but I've got a knife and it cuts fine and it does the job. But I've also got a little saw and a scissors and a tweezer and a freaking toothpick, right? So I can do other things well as well. And for me personally, I found more joy in that, to be maybe like a multi-skilled type of person, to be more of a rounded kind of guy. My old man always said to me, a man should be able to do anything, really, from, sewing clothes to anything. You should be able to be completely self-reliant and self-sufficient in all aspects. And I think I definitely took that to heart with, wanting to be more of a complete human being rather than just be the rock star or the this or the that. So for me,
awesome.
I'm fortunate in that I realized that, and I made peace with that, in a good way, where there was no anger at myself or other. I didn't blame the circumstances or the reasons I had at the time, where I realized I won't be able to spend as much time at the guitar as I would have wanted or needed, but instead still spend the time with the guitar and still enjoy it, still write music as I do, still play it, still do these things. But for me right now, it's more of a, I guess maybe more of a selfish thing. Is like, it's my own fulfillment that I get from doing these things, rather than everybody has to hear the song, everybody has to hear my band.
Sure.
And I think for those people who are bitter, they maybe haven't come to that realization within themselves that maybe you aren't that good. Without being a dick about it. But
No.
the reality of the situation is that sometimes you can be very good, or sometimes it's up to luck. I mean, honestly, I've
luck, yeah.
I've worked with bands and artists who are insanely talented and really, really, and did all the work, went to all the festivals, did all the radio shows, did everything, and yet just never broke. Just never got to that point. And so like I said, sometimes you're not as good as you think you are, and other times it's just a question of luck. So I think if we can find kind of peace within ourselves and acceptance of those facts, because nothing in this world is guaranteed, absolutely nothing. So
it's not. And also just the idea about music as a career. Like, I played a guitar and sang ever since I can remember, and I had to reckon with that quite early, I think. And at school I was very good at science as well as music, so I chose sound engineering because my music teacher sort of directed me that way. He was like, hey, there's an option here for you, like, you'd be amazing at this, which I'm very grateful for. But I think I had to reckon with all of these things that you're kind of talking about, in terms of, I might actually be really good and still get nowhere, or I might not make the cut, and it's a very competitive industry, and it relies so heavily on subjection of what's trendy in that moment, and all of these things that you have to disidentify with. And I think a lot of the artists that are really successful, and they actually have a belief in again, we're talking about timing, and in their own expression of these really human experiences. So chasing this kind of, if you're chasing like approval or fame or acceptance or adoration from the crowd, you might get lucky, but you also might not. But if you're doing it from a really grounded, centered, inspired kind of place. Okay.
This is going well. Right. Maybe the powers that be doesn't want us to talk about this. Let's switch lanes for a second here. I want to know, like you said, you've been playing guitar and singing ever since you remember. Do you come from a musical family?
Yeah, I do. But I would put a caveat on that. Like, I suppose it's like amateur musician family. So it's like there weren't any sort of like professional career, but everyone in my family has at least explored, or I think we're all sort of shadow artists in a way. Like, we all have musicianship in our blood and our bones and stuff, but none of us were like kind of able to get out from underneath the shame of like performing and sort of being out there in the world as a musician, sort of thing. So I come from a deeply musical background, but I think I've had to navigate the kind of shadow and the light aspect of that, because there's always been a difficulty for me in expressing myself in that way. Yeah.
Do you think that maybe that has ultimately led you to explore the coaching side, in order for for yourself to grow and progress as a, working on like you said, the
Yeah.
difficulty that you have in expressing yourself, and do you think that might have been a factor in that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in 2014 I was touring in the pop industry, and that was like, I was working on really like big tours. I like reluctant to say successful, because it is that is a successful idea, but I don't really subscribe to the fact that is like the top of the industry sort of thing, because there are many bands out there that do some great stuff, and then they're not necessarily popular. But as it happened for me, I was working with Ella Rare in 2014, and I was kind of like that person that you mentioned. I was very I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome. I was very bitter and angry, and I didn't really know why. And also it kind of came through in the sense that I was tired all the time. I was exhausted by, and I got to this kind of place where everyone said that you needed to get to in the industry. I was like touring full time. I was making a lot of money. I was friends with a lot of top artists and crew, and I was getting to have all of the experiences that they mentioned, like going to LA for 2 weeks and then touring the States and getting to see all the sights, and touring the world, even going to Asia, playing Supersonic in Tokyo and Osaka, and all of those things. And there was also sort of deep unsettled kind of feeling within me that was pushing me to like change and understand a bit more. So yeah, like you mentioned, it was very much the catalyst. And I think in terms of my timing and my soul's journey, if you want to put it that way, it's I took a year out after that, after having felt all of those things, went backpacking in Asia for a year, just to get my head out of that kind of continuous place of touring, because it is a continuous energy that you have to stay up with. And then I returned to touring after that. Like I toured with Tom Misch and Laurel Kana a little bit, and that was a way more satisfying and profound experience for me, because I'd taken that time out to understand like what my dissatisfactions were, and then just kind of like navigate those and integrate them into my life, and then return to touring in a more sort of wholesome way that kind of served me more, and I got more enjoyment out of. And also especially when I was mixing front of house for Tom Misch, just felt more confident, more embodied in who I was, and more inspired and more confident in my mix and the enjoyment that I was facilitating for the crowd and the musicians. And that's really what I think, that whatever it is you do, if you're seeking that fulfillment and contentment and sort of illumination, you'll be doing something right, and you'll be enjoying your life, right?
Absolutely, doing the job with integrity, and doing the job for the job's sake. Realizing that whether it was a choice or not a choice, in inverted commas, that you do this job, that this is the career that you do. So just to do everything with integrity, doing it to the best of your ability. And like you said, if you're not feeling it, you're not going to be able to do your best job, because there's going to be something hindering you, something holding you back. And it's it's this job is a fantastic job, and it's like we mentioned earlier, it's it's a very creative sort of thing in a way, but also you're facilitating creativity and you're facilitating enjoyment, and if you are happy to be that and live that, then you're going to do a better job rather than oh, I could have been over there playing the guitar, or I could have been doing that, or I could have for anything. And as the thing that you touched on about exhaustion, I don't think that we fully appreciated what the damage that exhaustion does, not not just to you personally, as as your human body, but also in terms of the enjoyment that you get out of your job, out of your everyday life, how exhaustion definitely facilitates depression, and fuels a lot of bad habits a lot of the time. As I have a personal experience with that. Just late nights and early mornings, and the continuation of that for weeks and months and years, and then it takes a toll, and if you don't stop every now and then like you did and take stock, or take a break or whatever it is, then there's going to be burnout, and there's going to be it's just a snowball, really. And some of us are lucky enough to get out of it, and others are not.
Yeah, that's true as well. That is true. It's important to note that, like, some people don't have the resources or the support system, or the courage to really get out of that situation. And unfortunately that does lead down some pretty dark roads, in terms of mental health, and also suicidality and
substance abuse.
That's
a hard thing, especially with alcohol, because it's almost encouraged, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I noticed that a definite change when I stopped drinking.
Yes.
I wouldn't say I was completely kind of moved to the side, but there is that sort of element. And it's that in itself takes a lot of strength and bravery, to be able to keep going, and to regardless of all these things, and that's another sort of norm that you kind of have to break out of and get comfortable with, and find that peace within yourself.
Totally.
And
yes.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I in all honesty cannot for a second say that I regret my decision to stop drinking. It's not, I never had a problem. It wasn't. I didn't get up and crack a beer. It wasn't.
No.
It was never that thing. But I had realized that it was getting to a point where it was becoming too much, and I would not. It wasn't really so much of an enjoyment thing as a habit, and then that the working 6 days a week, that habit becomes a bad habit very quickly. And I saw myself going down that road, and I decided to get out whilst my head was still above water. And I'm very grateful that I had the support to do that. So it's a hard thing to get out of.
It's true, and it's so socially involved. It's so socially pressurized and acceptable. And when you're facing this decision, do I quit alcohol or not, like there's all sorts of like social scenarios that might become awkward, or so people, if you've quit alcohol, people kind of either they celebrate you because they're inspired to cut down themselves or quit themselves, or they take it as a kind of, their own relationship with alcohol
Yeah,
starts to
you
be
remind them of
in
the faults in
question.
themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So they might put pressure on you to change back to drinking alcohol, or like, that, let's face it, a lot of friendships are identified with drinking together. Like, that's an integral part of a lot of friendships,
Yeah, yeah,
which is difficult to navigate. And yeah, this whole thing around the music industry, like grabbing a beer after a show, to wind down, like that's a really integral part of the culture. And also, when I took a year out, I was almost unemployable when I came back, because people were asking me like, what have you been up to? And when I was honest, I said I took a year out. They were like, oh, I don't know about that. But the thing is that if I'd have taken a year out to go touring with someone else, like, that would have been completely fine. So it's just about how people perceive your capability in the job. I didn't lose any of the knowledge or excellence that I had in mixing live concerts just because I took a year out in Asia.
yeah, yeah. But they seem to think that if you come back with bags under your eyes instead of a bag on your back, that then you've spent your time well. Unless you have to be tired all the time. You have to be overworked, and it's almost like a badge of honor.
It is.
And that's I've seen a few people touch on that recently, where I mean the truth of the fact is we were all overworked. If you were in this industry, especially like if you do events and things like that, if you work for like a sound hire company or something like that, the majority of the time, I mean, we're all overworked. We work 16-hour days, 18-hour days, don't bat an eyelid, No. And it, like I said, it's almost like a badge of honor, like you've made it. If you don't have time to scratch your back, then then you're the guy. But if you are more inclined to say, okay, well, I'm going to take these gigs and I'm not going to take these gigs because I know that I also need to rest and I need to do these things, then they're going to be like, you're a fucking tourist, or you're this or that. And there's another stigma that's, surrounding that. Is like, you have to be tired and you have to be overworked. And what I saw a lot of people say recently is that now that we've all had time to actually sleep and eat, and some people exercised, some people didn't, some people explored out of the creative bits of themselves, others didn't, others bitched on social media, but regardless of any of this, we've now had time to rest, and we need to take the importance of that into consideration when and if things open back up again and we start this whole steamroller again, that we need to remember to take time out and not be tired. Because I mean, even just the fact that you're tired, it affects your ability to do your job. And I mean, for me, the example that I always refer back to about being overtired and making mistakes that can potentially, cost lives. I was working for a crewing company, and as it goes with crewing companies, I was basically up and out of the house, going from job to job to job to job to job for about 2.5 days, where you get like an hour here, so you get to the venue early, and you have a little power nap, but there's never a time. And we were in the Hilton Metropole, setting up the chain hoists for the truss. And I mean, these chain hoists, I don't know, what do they weigh? Like 15 kilograms, right? But it's a solid block of metal with a fucking chain attached to it, right? And I'm on a tower, about 2.5 towers up, hooking these things to the roof. So there's two fellas underneath pushing the tower along. As I just go and I hook it, and I'm like, right, we're good. Next one, hook it, right, we're good. And I went to hook this chain, and I thought I'd hooked it. It clipped on, and it didn't. And I let go. and I see this fucking thing drop past me, and I look down, and there's the fella that's pushing the tower along. He wasn't wearing a fucking hard hat, and this chain was basically heading towards his head. And luckily, my reflexes were still good enough. I just fucking kicked this thing, and it fell right next to him. Oh. And at that moment, I was like, if I didn't kick this thing, this guy would have been dead, right? No hard hat, a block of metal falling on your head from that height, that would have been the end of it. And I mean, I got down, I rang the office, I said, whatever jobs you have for me for the next day and a half, cancel it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going anywhere. And from now on, I'm not going to do this anymore, because, you know, I could have fucking ended somebody's life. And I mean, I see these things happening all the time. Silly mistakes riggers make, or this or that. And the consequences of that could be disastrous. I mean, people can die. So, you know, we need to definitely, when we do go back, we need to maybe rethink this whole thing about this badge of honor of being too tired.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that story really hits home for me as well. Yeah, it's been in a lot of situations where I've been so overtired that I didn't really know who I was. I was never in the position of rigging anything as a mix engineer, but I remember in the pop industry, working for a push artist. Like, they worked us so hard that I had a few times where I literally came back to the rehearsal studio, or I was in one of the gig spaces, and I was on the verge of collapse. Like, someone had to, like, luckily a couple of the times there was an engineer there from the production company that kind of said, look, I can see you need to sleep right now, so I'll just throw this mix up for this rehearsal and you get some sleep. And it wasn't and even that felt like a failure, you know, because of
that's
this
what
kind
we
of
did
badge of honor thing.
That's what we do to ourselves, right? It's pride, and
pride.
you know, you're like, oh, am I not good enough to do this?
It's false pride too. It's a false pride. I wanna bring that in, because there are healthy and unhealthy aspects to everything, and I think that's an unhealthy kind of false pride, because pride is having enjoyment in your health and in your vitality, and these scenarios, they do not foster vitality. They don't foster vibrancy. They foster a state of disempowerment within all of us. You know, like we're walking around with like an empty tank, an empty energy tank, and whatever we tell ourselves, that's not being who we're here to be. That's not being fulfilled or fully engaged in the job. But that's walking around like a hungry zombie or a hungry ghost, you know.
Yeah. There's. I mean, that whole, you know, that tiredness and emptiness. It leaves a hole, and that hole is very easily filled with negative things, or like you said, the false pride, or this and that. And you know, you can almost get addicted to that sort of thing, and it's so much easier. I don't know what it is about us as Homo sapiens that tend to gravitate towards negativity and negative reinforcement so much easier than it is to move towards positive things. And like I said, I mean, the whole thing about the the social aspects of our job, where it's like, oh, we're all going to the pub, and you're not an engineer unless you can mix half cut, and these sorts of things that get said. If you've only had 2 pints before your show, and these sorts of, it's like a bravado type thing, and it's a very testosterone driven sort of thing. But it manifests in a maybe not the most positive way.
Yeah, There's a lot there. One thing I'm grateful for the pop industry was that it was absolutely off limits to drink before a show. Like, it was really discouraged, or absolutely off limits, you know.
Yeah.
And that was great because I got to, and by the way, a lot of people think they can't mix unless they're half cut, you know. And a lot of people think they can't play the guitar unless they're half cut.
Yep.
Or fully cut, you know, with some kind of drugs and drink concoction, you know, like they get into those spaces. And again, I think we're returning to the sense of, you know, what does it take for me to believe in myself, for me to have my full presence in this scenario, and to know that it's not any of these conditions that allow me to be this talented or this inspired. It is me that I'm accessing that state from a place, like whatever it is that I need. If for me it's like swimming in the sea and meditating, and now it's like not drinking and eating right and making sure I have 8 hours of sleep a night. That's how I access those states. But for some people it's like I have to have 4 pints of beer and some cocaine or something.
Yeah, you have to be hard, man. You have to be hard.
Yeah.
You have to be like the mostest in all these things. And I mean, I admit I was there. I you know, I was, but you know, I don't think that I was completely thinking clearly because of the exhaustion that, you know, like I said, years and years of late nights and early mornings. I mean, I remember when, you know, when my daughter was born and we moved back to England, it was, I would work until 4:00 in the morning, get home at 4 or 5, and I'd be up at 7, and I'd look after her until sort of like midday, 1:00, and then I'd head straight back to work, and, you know, doing that 5 days a week, getting 3-4 hours sleep a night. I mean, I could do it, and I functioned all right. I've never been a big sleeper, like, ever in my life, so I'm very much able to get away with a lot less sleep than you know. I mean, I don't need the 8 hours. I know I do need it, but you know, I can function fine on 5 or 6, no problem. So, and even, you know, that was that false sense of pride even within myself, because I was like, I'm the fucking hardest motherfucker out there, right? I work hard, I party hard, and I dad hard all day, every day.
Dad hard.
You know.
Nice. Love that. That's great.
And you know, I did that, and, you know, like I said, I unfortunately I fell into the trap of you know, substances and whatever to keep me going, and you know, that just bred things within myself that, you know, that I didn't want to be anymore. And I'd luckily for me, I mean, I'm very fortunate in that, you know, I woke up one day and I said, listen, I don't fucking know who you are, bro. I had a moment in my accountability mirror, as David Goggins says, you know, and I just said to myself, I said, listen, self, I don't quite know who you are anymore, and I don't like this person that you've become. So I think maybe it's time that you get out, you know, whilst you're ahead, you know, whatever. And you know, I'm very fortunate that I did have that, because other, you know, a lot of people don't, and I've seen people go down the wrong road to the point of no return.
Yeah, I think we're all given those moments, aren't we? I've definitely had that moment. I can't remember where it was. It was at a major festival, mixing monitors on the main stage, and I had that moment with myself as well. I was like, I'm not feeling right now. You know, I looked at the crowd and the stage and all the musicians, and like, this was my dream. Like, but I'm not feeling it. You know, I'm not present with who I am. Like, I don't know who I am right now, and I lost myself. I've lost myself. It's that feeling of like, where am I? I don't really know where I am right now. So I think it's really important to notice that, and I think we all get those chances. And again, with the courage thing, I think courage comes from having a good support network, and can be really grateful and fortunate that I found people to support me in those moments, and a lot of people don't get that. That's
yeah,
truth.
but
Also,
I mean, that's, I suppose, I've definitely been striving to be that for others, as much as I can, and that's why, I've been thinking about doing this with you for as since like March, April last year, when you started the the page, and we were talking about your podcast. How's that going, by the way? You knocking them out?
Yeah, I knocked them out for like 8 months solidly once a week, and I think, and I had some circumstances change last year, so I stopped doing them. But I've got 3 or 4 episodes to revisit. For those people that are listening, it's like conversations on trauma, and we explore trauma in a destigmatizing and sort of empathetic way, because we all go through hardship. And I think music industry, some of the most resilient people I've met have been my colleagues in the music industry. Like, let's not beat around the bush. We like you mentioned, we work 18-hour days as if it's nothing, and we go through these, the work is so demanding that it affects social life. We miss birthdays. We miss some things that you really don't want to miss. And
New Year's Eves. We miss Christmases. We miss fucking everything.
And even like the passing of relatives, and even funerals. Like, I wouldn't encourage anyone to miss any of those things. Like, now that I'm in the space that I'm in, but let's face it, like, if you're committed to a tour, then there is that aspect of it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And you can, and then so the other thing I was going to say is, you mentioned before, like, as human beings, I actually have done some research, and it's been recognized that we have a negative bias. So in order to keep us safe out in the sort of wildlands, we kind of hold fear within our being, within ourself, like up to 3 times as important as stimulus kind of that brings joy. Because and the thing is with that is, it was designed to, like, if something was off in the environment, our environments didn't change that much, actually. So if something did change, it was like, bam, there's the fear, like, let's take an action, and then very quickly return to homeostasis and joy. Yes. And like connection. But nowadays we live in a world that changes almost every second. You have to cultivate the homeostasis for yourself. And I think that's a really important aspect to consider amongst the resilience and kind of inspiration and being who you're supposed to be. Is it's not just going to happen anymore. It doesn't just happen. Like, you have to cultivate it yourself. You have to inquire into yourself. Who are you? Like, what are your values? What's your purpose in life? And what brings you joy? Also, there's a practice in Taoism, which is an ancient Chinese philosophy, called the 6 bowls, and it's like, what fills you up? What fills your container up? Like, what depletes you? Like, just knowing that is everything. Because if you do get exhausted, it's not always the case that you have to, like, drop everything and replenish. You could also just be aware of the fact that, mixing music really fills me up. Like, seeing someone smile in the crowd, or seeing the face of the musician, like, vibrant after their performance, or even in the moment of dynamic performance, like seeing how alive someone is because you're facilitating them to be that alive. It's all of these things can really fill you up, can really energize you and push you forward to being who you're supposed to be. Yeah.
And and having those I'm gonna quote David Goggins here. I'm listening to his book at the moment. Do you know who David Goggins is?
I've heard of him. But
He's
I
a
haven't listened.
Marine Delta Force guy who's, well, he was, but now he's basically an ultra marathon runner, ultra elite athlete. You know, he does
Wow.
these 200-mile races. He holds the record for the most pull-ups in 24 hours. He did 4,030 pull-ups in like 19 hours.
Whoa.
And he had a super hard upbringing. His dad was a bit of a bastard. They had a roller rink in the 80s. And I mean, since he was like 3-4 years old, him and his brother and his mother would have to go work there as well. You know, from 10 p.m. to like 2 a.m. they were working. You know, he's a child, and then they get
Whoa.
to sleep in the office, and his dad was like drunk, and he would beat them, and it was horrible. Anyway, but
Whoa.
going through this book and how he explains it, the audiobook is incredible because it's read by someone else, but he's also in studio, and he, like, every now and then he'll leave a comment or to sort of explain a little bit better what was said there, and then afterwards they have a little chat about the chapter, and there's challenges that they set to you in the book, keep a diary. I'm talking about the accountability mirror and about these sorts of things. And when you're on empty, right, when you've got these, and he talks about the cookie jar, right? He's like,
Yeah.
whenever you achieve something that's great, and you can just go sort of like, I did well, I did good here, not in a boastful sort of way, but just in a positive reinforcement kind of way. That's another cookie that you put in the jar, right? And then when you feel that you're on empty, when you have to, within your mind, go back to that cookie jar and just take a little cookie out of there, and see, okay, I did this, I can fall back on this, I've got this thing, I'm not as empty as I think I was. Maybe it's just a situation right now that's making me feel that I am empty, that I am depleted, but know that I've already got these things in the bag that I've done, where I've proven myself to myself, not to others, because I think as we've been going around this topic, it's about you and your fulfillment, and if we can truly live like that, then we'll all be more accomplished, and there'll be less conflict, and there'll be less anger and resentment towards others. If you do what you do for you, then and for the sole fulfillment of the task at hand, then you're going to do that so much better.
Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction, and it reminds me of something that I personally believe in terms of the difference between physical tiredness and spiritual tiredness, like the soul tired area. Like exhaustion can happen in the body, or it can happen in the sense of the spirit, where we don't, like our soul, we don't feel like we're kind of, like you said, I don't know who I am, or I'm not sure, I'm a bit lost on this path that I thought I was walking, that I thought was fulfilling me, but actually I don't really know why I'm doing this anymore. The kind of difference between those states, because in touring there's been times where or even venue work, there's times where you're physically exhausted, but you're actually really deeply satisfied that you're contributing to something greater than yourself, and or even just contributing to yourself, like, oh, this is great, I'm getting to work here, like this is a lifelong dream. I remember when I mixed monitors at the O2 Arena, I felt that as well, and it was it was like, this is a lifelong dream I've had, and amazing, this has happened. I've gotten to tick this box, and that's incredible. So yeah, the difference between having that cookie jar and having the sole purpose of like, what is it, what is the work that I'm here to do, like what am I here to achieve, and am I achieving that, like. And I think that's a very complex and nuanced space, like, and it depends on us knowing exactly who we are, like what are our values, like what values are being kind of triggered in this space. Like, I have a value for like service or love, or being connected to nature. So when I get the opportunity on a tour to go visit some other countries' nature that I wouldn't have visited before, like that's another part of things that really fulfills me. I remember getting to go kayaking in San Diego Bay, and I was like, well, when is this ever going to happen to me outside of this opportunity?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to go to San Diego on holiday, personally. So it was just a real joy. And and in terms of like connection and breeding connection with the crowd, and the musicians, like those things really, really fill me. So I think it's a great frame to understand this cookie jar and what's in it, and when you're depleted, what can you find within that moment to be like, okay, I understand this is something part of my life's journey that I'm walking on. And I think that real sense of integrity and agency is really important. And I think that it gets most desperate and despairing when we can't find that in the current situation. We can't see any of that. So I know that the opposite to despair is actually relational space. It's not hope. It's being able to relate either to ourselves or our journey, or where we see ourselves in the future, or having a sense of community.
Yeah. I think the whole thing about community is a very important thing, and it can circle back to the whole, when you decide to get yourself better in terms of cleaning up your act and these sorts of things, that sense, that longing for community can sometimes be a trigger to relapse and to get back into old ways, because you had that support, and you may realize within yourself, or maybe you don't, that that community is not always positive reinforcement. But since we as human beings aren't meant to be alone or lonely, we seek tribe, we seek ourselves in others, and we seek those who see themselves in us, sort of thing, where people that you relate to, and it can be a daunting thing, but you do end up finding others who will be part of your community regardless, and that those are victories that that's going to last a lot longer, and they're going to stay with you, and I think they might be definitely more meaningful in the long run. But it's we are also we've become so accustomed to the immediacy of everything. Everything is now. Everything is instant. Everything is this. People have completely forgotten what patience is all about, and the viewing something in the long run, or thinking about tomorrow, not just today, sort of thing, is something that I think a lot of us probably need to work on quite fiercely. In the just. Yes, life is short, fair enough, and there's only so many opportunities and this and that, but sometimes you need to, you just need to take a little bit of time. And I think with that, actually sitting down and meditating, because I've always been interested in meditation, and I've always known the benefits of that. I mean, when I was in high school, we did many plays and things. I was acting quite a lot, and our director, she was great. She taught us about method acting and all these sorts of things, and just sitting and even visualizing your role or getting outside your head. And she taught us some sort of self-hypnosis techniques and things to get out of your body and to let these things go, and just to let your mind go. But in the years since I started working, always like, oh, I want to do that, but I don't have time. And I think we need to make time for these things, because I've found, that meditation has helped me so much. And if I don't have time, if I have to choose between meditating and making a sauna, then I'll just meditate in the sauna. It's I think it's these are important things, and sitting down for a meal, not eating on the go, or these sorts of things. We need to definitely get back to that. To maybe be fuller us's.
Yeah, that's true. I think a great amount of our society is anti those things. Yeah, 'cause
it has become like that. But even in medicine,
True.
I mean, you talk about we talk about plant medicine. And one particular plant that that I absolutely 100% firmly believe in is cannabis. It is one of the oldest cultivated plants. It's one of the first plants that we sort of started growing, and the health benefits of that is great. But not just that. Let's take away the cannabis, but herbs, spices, sage, can help. Oil of oregano, oregano. It helps with your lung functions, these sorts of things. And the worst thing for me about that is that it's become alternative medicine when that was the original medicine. But now the phrase has been coined, because now you have traditional Western medicine, and it's all it's all chemicals, and it's all synthetically engineered things, and the importance of listening to your body, getting the sleep, getting to eat, getting these things are overlooked so much, because there's a little band-aid that you can put on this the hole in the dam. Just patch it up with a little pill. You've got a headache. Oh, just take a little pill, take a little aspirin. You've got a this or that. You take a little this, take a little that, instead of going to the root of what the problem is. Why are you getting headaches? Because you haven't eaten, because you're smoking too much, because you're stressed, because you're on a
Don't drink water.
Not drinking enough water. It's a big thing, man. People don't replenish their water as often as they do. I mean, I've made a huge point of that always, luckily, but it's we're so busy that it's easier just to patch it up quickly and move along than to go like, hold on, why? Where's the imbalance? What's going on? Is it is it in my psyche? Is it in my physical being? Is it in my where is this? There's obviously an obstruction somewhere that's causing this, because it's my body telling me, listen, buddy, there's something wrong. And instead of me listening to my body saying, okay, hold on, what do I do to fix this? I'm like, wait, there's a little Band-Aid, stick that on there, and then we just keep rolling.
Feel better.
Yeah.
But that's not sustainable, right? It's not. Like you said, a really good point to note is that long-term, if you align yourself to long-term fulfillment, you'll create more space and more time within your life, right? It's like all of these little distractions, they take up so much time in the long run, because you have to do things so much more to be happy, or quote unquote happy, at least have a sense of kind of relief from your pain. Whereas if you turn to the pain and find the cause, and it might feel like painful, but if you find the support that you need, that you can absolutely handle that pain, and then that pain becomes a part of your life that you relate to, and it becomes a part of who you are, and
you can turn that into a positive. That's another
drives your behavior.
It's another cookie in the jar. It's like I had this thing, and I had the courage to turn towards it instead of turning away from it, and I superseded this, and I'm a better person for it. I've learned from that. Now let's move along, and then you're ready. You're like, what's next?
Yeah,
like.
what's next? And also, I think one of the things is that I think within the culture is that I think we're told that if we just ignore our pain, then it will go away, that we won't have to face it. But actually, facing the pain is way quicker, way easier than allowing it to drive almost all of our behaviour.
100%, man.
And
100%.
Forever until you face it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like in that energy equation for me, like the where I find my resilience and my courage is that equation. Like, do I want to live my entire life in this space of pain, or do I want to face this pain and find out what it's teaching me in this moment?
Yeah, and I mean that takes a lot of courage, because it's very scary facing these things.
Yeah, it is.
And
So the patience thing, like do it when you're ready, and like do it slowly when you like you don't have to. That's the other thing you mentioned with the instant gratification. Like we want everything now, so we tend to face our pain and we be like, okay, let's get this done, but that's not how it works. You have to be kind and gentle and do it patiently, because things like my coach always says, like, it takes months for a plant to grow. It takes years for a tree to grow. Like, nature takes time to change.
Yeah.
And we are a part of nature, as much as we hate to admit that. We are a part of nature.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you just look at a human baby, how long does it take a human baby to get to the point where they're sort of independent?
60 years.
Where they can do things for themselves. And this journey, it takes a while. First it's crawling, and then it's walking, and then talking, and then you get potty trained, and you can do these things for yourself, and then you start getting your interest, and you start finding yourself, and it takes a long time. I mean, your brain isn't fully developed until you're 25 years old. So if you're lucky enough to live 100 years, that's a quarter of your life that's spent on growing. So now you want to rush things and get things done now. Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on the severity of the problem that you're facing, and how quickly that really needs to be dealt with. It, I suppose, depends on problem to problem. If you've got, yes, be kind to yourself and allow yourself to work through it, but don't in that process turn away from it, and become sort of disheartened, discouraged. I mean, what you can do is you can chip away at it slowly until the statue reveals itself out the rock. But if you just see this boulder and you're like, I gotta do it now, then sometimes it doesn't work. But also, don't be gentle with yourself, but also don't be too lenient with yourself. Don't say, okay, now I'm not gonna do this now. It seems too big of a problem. Don't turn away. Don't run away from it. You gotta take it head on. You gotta have the courage to do that. And that, it takes a lot of bravery to do that. And, sometimes it does take pain, and people are scared of that. And that's why they then turn away again. But like you said, rather than live the rest of your life with this thing, turn around and face it head on, with, the gentleness that you need, but also with enough effort on your own part to endure something that's uncomfortable, but ultimately will make you grow and get better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's beautiful.
That's
I said it better myself. Brilliant.
Oh, great, wonderful. Man. Lovely.
Yeah.
Listen, I have got a few things that I got to get on with, unfortunately. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope that maybe we can do another one at some stage. And just talk more about these things, because I really do think that in this time, especially now, like I said at the beginning, is that there's a lot of people who feel done in by no one in particular, who've lost everything, and
Yeah.
haven't had maybe they don't have the courage to start a new thing or to go down a different route or something like that, or are they holding on to the belief that everything's going to come back the way that it was before, and they'll just keep going, but for now they're angry. I think that we really need to be more gentle with ourselves and with others, especially those who are looking to support you. Not to take your anger out on those who are there for you, in a negative way. So the ways in which we do this, and I really commend you for the way that you've taken this challenge, the new challenge that you've done. I congratulate you. I think it's great, and I love to see just the steadfast resilience of I'm going to get out of this on top. I'm going to get out better. And if we can all just be a little bit more relaxed with each other and remember that we love each other, and when people maybe offer advice or just a shoulder, that it's not a negative thing, and it doesn't make you weaker for taking that shoulder, and it doesn't make you weak to shed a tear. There's nothing, absolutely fucking nothing wrong with crying as a man. There's nothing wrong with showing your emotion. There's nothing wrong with telling a man, "Hey man, I love you." I tell my friends that all the time. I've luckily never been scared or shy or anything like that. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family where we express these things to each other all the time, and there's no shame in it doesn't make me anything if I tell a man, "Hey man, friend, I love you. I think you're important in this world, and I want you to be here, and I want to be there for you." So I think we all just need to be there for each other a little bit more. And what you're doing right now is facilitating that, and it's breaking down these walls and the stigmas and things like that. So job well done, mate.
Oh, thanks, Stephen. It's really great to receive that. I received that with love, and thank you so much.
Lovely, brother.
And I just think it's like what I just also celebrate you for what you've just said. Just you're also. I just want to reflect that you're also doing this exactly what you said that I'm doing. You're also doing.
Thank you, brother. So thank you, man.
All right, let's do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Okay. See you later.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I have, and that you found something in there that you can hold on to. I'll be including Pete's social media and his website as well. I do mine, so you can catch up with us and see what we're up to. For now, that's it. Please like, share, subscribe, keep it sound.